Cloud. So welcome everybody to Thursday night. Tonight we're going to be covering element 14. So this is hands down one of the most important elements in the book, because it's an element that a lot of people look forward to, but it's also an element that a lot of people are scared to get to. And it talks about transitioning to healthy eating for life. And the great thing with this element is it's spelled out for you. It's a simple process that we're going to walk you through tonight. And there's really nothing hidden there. So we're going to lay it all out for you. We're going to keep it simple. And the great thing with the way Dr. A has this laid out is you don't have to be a nutritionist or a dietitian or anything else to figure this stuff out. It's laid out for you specifically, and it's a goof-proof method. So with that said, of course, I'm going to cover mindset, skill set, and action. So got some more folks popping in. Welcome to those folks this evening. And guys, at the end of this course, if you got any questions, we'll stop the recording and answer any question that you got and move forward with that. But of course, mindset, skill set, and action, learning how to transition from phase 1 of weight loss to phase 2, which focuses on learning how to eat healthy for life. Mindset has created a transition plan that works for you, because transition can be different for everyone. So transition does not look the same for Allie as it would for me, as it would for Val, as it would for anybody else that's in here. It's going to look a little bit different for each and every one of us. And we'll dive into the nuts and bolts of that in just a few minutes. And then, of course, the action is empower yourself to make choices that will support long-term weight management and help you generate optimal health and well-being. So just remember that long-term weight management and generate optimal health and well-being as you move forward. And one thing we're going to talk a little bit about later on, several weeks down the road, is longevity. If you follow this process, you could possibly extend your life 3, maybe even 5 years by not only reaching your healthy weight, by optimizing it through this transition phase and eating healthy for life. So, Allie, I'll flip it over to you. If you need me to jump in, feel free to raise your hand. I'm right here with you.
Val, let me see that water glass you're drinking from. Look at that. Twinning. All right, well, welcome everybody. What I want to start out by saying is the key to a beautiful transition is, people are like, what do I do? What do I eat? How much do I exercise? What do I do? It's here. So if you've been, diving into your life book and you've been working on the healthy habits, mastering or getting really close to mastering the 6 healthy habit areas are really one of the biggest keys to transitioning successfully from weight loss onto your next goals, right? Because we're always transforming, we're always growing, right? So, the fuelings are something that, the eating the fuelings 5 times a day, that's for weight loss. Eating the fuelings 4 times a day and having 2 lean and greens, that's for weight loss. So as we transition out of that and into healthy eating for life, a big part of healthy eating for life is what tells us to put stuff in our mouth, our mind. So, working on that emotional management, working on those healthy habits of sleep and hydration and, nutrition and motion. Those are all really important things as we transition. Your coach is going to go over the nuts and bolts with you of what you add back in when and how you track that. That's another thing is, we talk all the time in this book about building an awareness. So, we get this kind of golden ticket when we start this program, because the nutritionists and dietitians at Johns Hopkins, they kind of made it so that we don't have to think about anything except 1 or 2 meals a day, those lean and green meals. And those lean and green meals, the beautiful thing is by taking all the rest of that out of the way, so we just know, hey, if we do that, our body's getting what it needs for weight loss. We're being trained with those lean and green meals and with these healthy habits to then take those goals and carry them on out into the rest of your life, so you don't keep gaining and losing the same amount of weight. Now, that being said, it's not a straight line. There is curly cues. You'll get out there, you'll be doing great, and maybe a life event hits, and so you dive back into element 4 to learn how to find that structure and navigate that change, and then you go back and you're back to where you were. And that's something that all of us can speak into. Kenny and I right now, we're switching from summer to fall. We're changing from kind of that summer free flow back into a more structured fall. And so we've already kind of gotten ahead of the game. And at the beginning of August, we just made a checklist of things that we're doing every single day. And we're holding ourselves to those things to get back in the rhythm of that structure. You know, when you've transitioned off and you don't have the structure of the 5 and 1, you know, we make a new structure to meet us where we are on our goals. So how do you know when to transition? How do you know when you're ready? Well, there's a wonderful little diagram on page 267 of your life book. You know, we start out wanting to get healthy, wanting to find wellness in all the areas of our health. Okay. And so we start out overweight, a lot of us. And so then we go into that weight loss phase, but that weight loss phase is a lot more than just weight loss, isn't it? It's also building healthy habits in those 6 habit areas. And your coach is working with you while the weight's just coming off from doing the program. You're working on the mindset stuff. Then when you get to phase 2, that's when you've reached that healthy weight, you know, that goal that you set for yourself, or where you feel like your doctors are like, hey, your numbers are great, your blood work is great, you know, you're running like a 20-year-old now, whatever you're doing, this is fantastic. When you get to that point, then you talk to your coach and you're like, okay, I don't need to lose more weight. Now I want to transition and just start working on wellness for life, right? And so this is kind of what this chapter is talking about right here. They give us some numbers to kind of help you see when you're at that place. You know, your doctor's probably going to want to see you at a BMI of around 25, your body fat, a certain percentage, your waist circumference, if you're a male or female, a certain size. So then when we get, and that's just measurement stuff to tell you you're there, but you're also going to know when you're there in here. And, you know, Kenny will tell you a lot of these charts were made a long time ago and everybody's built a little different. You know, some of those measurements wouldn't work right for Kenny just because of the way he's built. So, you know, you'll work with your coach to figure out when you're at that place, but your doctor will also let you know, because they'll be really happy when you come in and you get your yearly physicals and checkups. Every day that you're in phase 1, you simply get up and focus on that day. So then when you get out of phase 1 and you get to phase 2, it's going to shift. And a lot of people freak out because they're worried. It's been so easy. We've been almost on autopilot doing the program. And now we have to start thinking about food again, right? But I want to give you some things that'll help you feel good. I feel like it's sort of like you've been going through Oz and you are Dorothy with the ruby slippers, because that lean and green meal, the portion of it, the what it's made of, that has been your little gift of what eating looks like moving forwards. So when you begin to transition, you really already have a lot more knowledge about nutritionally what's life gonna look like moving forwards. Now we're just gonna have to do that tracking like we did in the beginning, just to get in the flow of bringing more and more grocery store food back into your life, but it's still lean and it's still green, and you're going to add some other things in, and your coach will work with you on that. Another thing you're going to add in as you transition is you're going to start looking at healthy motion. You know, maybe you've been doing some a little bit as you've been feeling better, but it's going to be part of your daily routine. It's going to be something added, the way you've tracked your water and the way you've tracked how often you're eating. We're going to stay in that grazing habit, but that grazing habit is not going to be as fueling heavy as it's been. We're slowly going to start removing fuelings. Your coach will work with you week by week in a breakdown of that. If you want to kind of get, if you're near transition or you're in transition and you're feeling wonky about it, or you just want to dive a little bit deeper in your, let's see if I've got it, in your Habits of Health book. So, you know, we talk about the life book, but this is the companion, the Habits of Health book. Go ahead and read part 2.8, Healthy Eating for Life, Your Transition to Permanent Health, for a more detailed explanation of your body's set point. But in simple terms, you've increased the normal release of leptin to balance your hunger, minimize insulin secretion, and avoid excessive fat storage. That's how you do it. That's really that simple. So you're like, Allison, that's some big words. That's a little bit weird, but that's what we've been doing all along. The fuelings have been keeping our insulin levels steady. So we're going to help you transition to keeping that going, right? And keeping those small, frequent meals and getting really good vitamins and nutrients and minerals in your life. But you get more calories, right? Because now we're not trying to lose weight anymore. We're just trying to stay where we are, but we want to continue to grow in our health. It matters how much you eat. You want to keep the balance of the set point so you can compensate, increase leptin, reduce insulin, and prevent transitional weight gain. So if you look on page 271, this is one of the tools that we utilize. Okay. Now it took me a minute to get comfortable with this tool, but when you transition, you're going to determine something called your total energy expenditure. Okay. That's how we find that magic caloric zone for you. And it's going to be different for me than it is for Kenny, than it is for Val, because we all are entering different numbers into this equation. So it's basically, it helps you add calories until you reach your body set weight point, where your calories in equal your calories out. So, Kenny is out. His job is very active. He's out mowing lawns and weed eating and doing stuff all day long. So he's probably getting a lot more healthy motion each day than me. So his total energy expenditure calculator is going to have some really different numbers in it. And then we're going to talk about your transitional eating plan. So, I think the first week, you don't take any fuelings out, but you add some more veggies in, right? Then as you start removing fuelings, you start adding in other things like grains and fruits. Remember how we took and set fruits to the side? We will eventually be adding those back in, and you're going to learn how to do all of that. So,
and that's on page 277, Allie.
Okay, so that's on page 277. So that's jumping a little bit ahead there, but this is that wonderful chart, and you'll go over this with your coach. And I talked to you about the importance of tracking, just like you did in the beginning, where you'd write down which fuelings you had and you track your water. You're going to be tracking your calories. You won't have to do this forever, because you're going to get to where you just know it. But in the beginning, you're going to have to kind of get the feel for it, learn to see what a fueling or a meal looks like, and then what the in-between meals look like as far as size and contents, and then also your healthy motion that's factored into there as well. So that shows you how we add things back in, but we're going to track all kinds of different things. But it says week 1, we add additional vegetables, week 2, fruits, week 3, dairy, and week 4, whole grains. And by the end of week 4, you'll have added each of these 4 food groups. Now, I will say, when Val and I were working together for her transition, we didn't necessarily we took a little bit more time. Maybe we took 2 weeks, and then we made another change. You go at the rate at which you want to go. It's getting comfortable with that change, and there's no rush. You don't have to do it 1 week. You can do 2 weeks of that and then ease into adding something else. We want to do it where you feel comfortable.
And I want to chime in really quick.
Yes, please do.
I think one of the great things about transition is this. Remember, y'all, if you look at transition and say, oh God, I can finally get away from the fuelings. If you've got that mentality about the fuelings, that you hate them and you just want to get back to pizza and ice cream. If that's your thoughts and you're watching this recording, you need to slow down and go back to element 4. You've got to slow down and check yourself. And, life is going to look a little different going forward. Will you have pizza one day? Maybe in the future. Will you have ice cream on occasion? Maybe, but in moderation. But, the thing about transition that so many people get scared of is, number one, they're not sure what to do. Well, page 277 gives you a breakdown week by week. Calculating your TEE. Some of you may not be good at math. You can go to the habitsofhealth.com website, and under the 3 and 3 plan, you can look for how to calculate your TEE and plug those numbers in automatically. One thing I will caution everybody on, regardless whether, here again, I'm walking about 35,000 steps a day right now. So my activity level, if I were to calculate it right now, I'm going to use the low number. I'm not using moderate activity or heavy exerciser. I'm still using that low number because I'm still trying to burn calories. But even if I were with 35,000 steps a day, I would recommend that everybody underestimate their activity level. So I think it's a multiplier of 1.2. It's in the TEE calculator. I'm not going to dive into that. But so unless you're training for a marathon, and if you are, raise your hands. Don't see anybody doing that. Make sure you use that, light exercise multiplier. But the thing with transition is being intentional and being intentional, just very intentional, and know that it's a process. Know that it's going to take some time, just like Allie said. If your emotional management is in check and you're not highly susceptible to carbs, which we're going to talk about in element 16, you're not one who's addicted to brownies, for example. So some people find that when they reintroduce a watermelon, they crave everything. This fella right here is one of them. So I can't eat watermelon anymore. And I'm okay with that because you know what? I'm so scared of going back to 300 pounds. I'm not going to eat it anymore. And I'm okay with that. So, and so you may have to take some things off the table. Dairy for some people, you may find that it gives you an inflammatory response. So if you have arthritis or RA symptoms or if you got fibromyalgia and you reintroduce dairy and you have a flare up, ding, ding, you may not be able to have that dairy anymore. And
I reintroduced bread a little bit and my body said, nope. And apparently, it affected me. It caused inflammation in my body when I had too much bread. Sourdough and rye don't, but I still use them very sparingly. So that was a surprise. Like, oh, I thought bread was going to come back. And my body said, no, thank you. So you'll find that happens too. Whether it's bread or certain oils or fats or like Kenny was saying, pasta, right? Like my body's like, no, thank you. So it's funny. You think you get excited and you think, well, maybe I'll start to, enjoy that every now and then, but your body reacts in a way like, no, we don't like that anymore. And so it's kind of a relief. And you'll find that it's actually a lot easier to transition than you thought. And going back to those old things, you remember, oh yeah, I don't feel good when I do that. And your brain actually pays attention and it won't keep asking you for that. So that's good to know too. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, Kenny.
Oh, no, you're fine. And the other thing is we'll put some links in the Optimal Awakenings page in the files category. There are some sample transition menus in there. So if you're on a 1,200 calorie diet, once you transition and you move away from the fuelings, there's a 1,200 calorie, a 1,300 calorie, right on up. So, it takes you right on through that process. I think that's all I got for now, Allie. Go ahead.
Well, and one of the things that Kenny always loves to remind everybody on this is you may gain as many as 5 pounds as you're transitioning, as you're getting used to where that caloric sweet spot is. So Kenny also always suggests to his clients, and I've always thought it was a really great idea, if your goal weight was 145, he suggests go ahead and get down to 140. And then that allows you that 5 pounds of wiggle room so that you think, well, I really wanted to be 145. I got down to 140 because as you transition, it gives you that space to move back and forth. And sometimes as you transition, you'll actually lose a little weight anyway, because you're still finding that caloric sweet spot. And maybe you've upped your exercise, or maybe you've just found that a lot of the lean and green things you're eating are very good glycemic index wise. And there maybe you eat the leanest proteins just because you love shrimp or fish or whatever. So, it's a little bit different for everyone, but I love, Kenny, your idea of taking it down 5 more pounds just to have that space in there as you transition.
And that's another example of giving. So, and I'll use, Sonia's not here tonight, but she's one of my clients that I've coached. She's done well. She started, I think it was 210 pounds, 215 maybe. But her goal was to get down to 145, I believe it was. And we took her down to 135. So, and Sonia's not a young lady by any means. And so she freaked out at first about that. But what that extra 10 pounds it gave her emotional space. Mm-hmm. Because just like you said, some people will still lose in transition, which she did. But then what happened a little bit later, as she got further, 7 or 8 weeks into transition, things got a little wonky, work got a little crazy, dogs got sick or wasn't able to walk, her back started hurting. So instead of her getting all that motion in, things started creeping up. And she's checked in with me a couple of times. She's like, I'm still below my original goal, but I'm getting close. but that gives you that buffer so that you can reel yourself back in. And so here again, yes, she may have put on a few pounds because of her back and these other issues, but she caught it before she went over that original goal number, and she's still below it.
Yep.
And so even though some days she goes, this just sucks that I'm back where I'm at. And I'm like, but you're still below your goal.
Yeah.
You're still there. You're still winning. And so, that's an emotional buffer that you get that really helps.
I love that it's an emotional buffer. I mean, you're absolutely right. And it is nice to have that wiggle room. But also things change. Like if you hurt your back. And so one of the ways that you were having the amount of calories you were having each day was because of the amount of steps you were walking. And all of a sudden you can't walk those amount of steps. Then it might be time to go, all right, well, I need to back off on my calories a little bit because I'm not burning that 350 calories that I normally burn doing this. So as I heal, I'm going to back that up a little bit. You don't need as much. You don't need all those calories that you needed when you were doing all that healthy motion. So, and you just stay in touch with your coach. Another thing might be stress level goes up, or, and so you're getting stressed out and you're not getting good sleep, and good sleep can make you have a little bit of weight gain. And so then it's time to lean in and go, I need some good tools for helping process my stress. And then that cortisol goes down and everything regulates again, and you're back to where you need to be. This is a lifelong journey. Things, it's sort of like having children where you're like, oh, they're sleeping through the night. And then a tooth comes in. You're like, oh, they're not sleeping through the night. And then they're back to sleeping through the night. And then something else happens and they're not sleeping through the night. So it's just, then they get to where they sleep through the night. And then they become teenagers and they don't ever wake up. And you have to go wake them up with the blowhorn to get them out of bed. So it's the same thing with our health journey, and just expect that, expect that to happen. Expect it to not be a one and done. This is a process. I'm 6 years in, and every time I have a transitional moment in my life, Wednesday, I became an empty nester. And so I'm experiencing that different, vibe and feel and flow in my home. And so I'm adjusting accordingly. And I've got set things that I do every day to kind of give me firm footing as I emotionally navigate this new chapter of my life, which is actually, so far, it's been pretty good. But this is, it really does break it down, moving through page 277 on through to the end. And you do want to monitor your weight during this. I know that when we're on the 5 and 1, we're hopping on the scale once a week. We're going to want to hop on the scale a little bit more than that, maybe a couple of times a week, because we want to monitor as we add things in. Is it making a huge jump? Like, did you gain 5 pounds in one day? Like, maybe we need to back off or revisit or add some, motion. So you're gonna go back to monitoring a little bit. And this is to be a healthy relationship. Again, hopping and on the scale, monitoring your weight during this time, it's just an indicator of how we're going, and helps us kind of navigate where that caloric sweet spot is for you. And it can change. We've got this TEE calculator, because if you start feeling really great and you've transitioned and it's been a year, and all of a sudden your buddy's like, hey, let's do a half marathon or a 10K, and you start training for that, things are going to get wonky again, because now you're calorically maybe, expending a lot more every day than you had been before. And that's a great time to touch back with your coach, and they can help you navigate that. So it's just an ever-changing thing, but it's wonderful. And we have all the tools we need. And the Lean and Green meal tells us how to eat. So, it's really not rocket science, and you're way more equipped than you realize. Again, I always compare it to Dorothy and the Ruby Slippers. She was able to go home the whole time. She just didn't know it. So this is the same thing. You've got all the tools you need, having navigated this journey. If you are struggling, you always have your coach there, but it's just those things are things that they might be habits that you're a little shaky on, and then you can start tracking those habits. It's just, you'll just get back in the groove until you get them pretty rock solid, and then you won't be shaky anymore. So.
Yep. And Allie, the one thing I want to address, I know we're getting close to time.
Yep.
There's a lot of gurus on Facebook, and there's a lot of gurus on TikTok who talk about counting macros and adding protein here and intermittent fasting, and all of these things. One thing that we know is this: if you stay to the foundation of this program in your transition phase, continue eating 6 times a day. And just like Allie said, if you find that you're weighing yourself and you notice that the scale may be going up, just don't get emotional about the number on the scale, but ask yourself, what has changed since the last time I weighed? What have I done differently? Maybe you're not drinking water as much. Maybe you've cut from 70 or 80 ounces of water back to 30 ounces, or even barely any. Maybe you started pumping sodas back in there again. So if that has changed since the last time you weighed, then that's not serving you well. So, and that's when you got to talk to your coach about that and say, hey, this is what I found. This is what I want to do going forward. Because, if I'm drinking 7 sodas a day, it's not going to serve me well. I'm just using it as an example. But you got to figure out what has changed, and then be intentional to make those changes. Get that water intake back up. Because remember, and just like I said today, water is that transport mechanism for you to burn extra calories. So if you're burning fat, the water will help transport it over into energy to help transport it out of your body. But if you're not drinking enough water, you're using recycled water. So everything becomes cloudy and messy. So just keep that in mind. And I think that's pretty much it, Allie. Next week, we're going to talk about how to eat healthy for life and pull that, veil back a little bit further. But I mean, this is the cornerstone, and utilizing those sample menu plans is a great way to get started. And, I think with what we've given you this evening, that gives you some firm footing to start on. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.